So I want to talk about angels in Red Square in Moscow. Now, Red Square is the bit right in the centre of Moscow. And I spent a lot of my time in Russia at one stage in my life, and strange things happened in Red Square. So many strange things that I wonder whether God's got angels that operate especially in Red Square, because in the Bible it does seem that angels have charge over certain geographical areas and certain people and places. And I just wonder, so many odd things happen there. Well, there's angels, not just with me, but specifically in Red Square. We'll start the first time. I was there in the days of the Soviet Union, where, of course, preaching and stuff was not allowed, and I was with a brother who was a very nice guy, but him and I were wired very differently, and he was very nervous. And we had these tracts, we'd given them out, and he was very nervous about doing it. It was a fairly risky sort of thing. And in the streets that are off Red Square, there's cafes and restaurants. And I said, oh, come on, let's go and get something to eat. Oh, no, he said, no, you better be careful. The Russians might poison us. I said, no, they can't poison us. There's like plenty of cafes and stuff in Red Square. There's no problem. Well, they had just opened McDonald's in Tverskaya, which was the first McDonald's in Russia, in the Soviet Union. And people were coming from all over the Soviet Union to go to McDonald's. And the line outside McDonald's, like it snaked backwards and forwards, all up, could have been up to 2 kilometres. And it was fantastically interesting for Soviet people to go to McDonald's. They just couldn't believe it that Gorbachev had allowed McDonald's to open, and you had to wait literally for a couple of hours to get in there. And so anyway, this brother said, oh, come on, let's go to McDonald's. At least we know what's in McDonald's. I said, well, I'm wait for 2 hours to get in, to get a Big Mac. I said, oh, that's crazy. Yeah, he said, yeah, we must do this. And I thought, oh. So the theme of a lot of my missionary memories is that when I'm weak, then I'm strong. Or I'm not strong, but God uses you when you are weak. And I was weak because I was in a bad mood with this dear brother, because I thought it is bizarre to wait 2 hours to buy a Big Mac when there's cafes and stuff. I mean, don't be crazy. Anyways, no, we've got to do this. So we were waiting in this long line. You can go on the internet and see the long lines that there were when McDonald's opened in Moscow. And I got cranky with him and I said, look, you stay on the line, I'm just going to go off. I was so cranky. So I went off on my own and I stood there and I just stood on a street round a corner from McDonald's thinking this is bizarre. And I saw there was a big office block. And I worked out those letters, Pravda. And I thought, hang on, this is the head office of Pravda, which was the biggest newspaper in the Soviet Union. That had everybody in the Soviet Union had this newspaper. Pravda means truth, by the way, strangely enough. And well, I thought maybe we could put an advertisement there, advertising Bible literature. And I thought, well, of course, they're not going to allow that. Well, I walked in there, just a young bloke, and the doorman sort of got me straight away, said, where are you coming, who are you coming to? And I said, well, I want to speak to the editor or the advertising manager. Well, there was no advertising in the Soviet Union, so there was no advertising manager. I said, I'd like to speak to the editor or the assistant editor, please. Duncan Heaster from the UK. Like, I mean, I was just some totally random bloke, but I made out, well, yeah, you know who I am, don't you? Well, I mean, I was just a random bloke. Well, he let me in. Now, don't forget, the editor and assistant editor of Pravda, these are some of the most, well, amongst the most powerful people in the Soviet Union. And the doorman sort of said, oh, there's a fellow from England. You got an appointment with a guy from the UK? Well, I'll send him up. So I went up to see these guys, are very powerful people. And I said, well, I want to put an advertisement in your newspaper advertising Bible literature. And they said, well, you realise we don't have adverts, and you realise that, well, certainly previously this was absolutely, totally not allowed. I said, oh, yes, certainly, I understand that, all right. And they chopped and changed and hummed and hawed and said, you know, we're taking a big risk we could lose our jobs, we could get in political trouble. Give us $1,000 in cash and we'll do it. And we won't give you a receipt. I had about 20 quid in my back pocket. I don't have $1,000. But this friend of mine, his brother, had told me, he said, in case we get in trouble with the communists, I've got at least $1,000 in cash in the sort of lining of my jacket, just in case we get in trouble and might buy ourselves out of it. I said, well, right you are, $1,000, right? Yes, $1,000. I said, well, just go and see my colleague and I'll be back in half an hour. So I went back to McDonald's. The offices of Pravda were right opposite what was McDonald's there in Tverskaya, just off Red Square. And I went back to him, and he was sitting there. He bought me a Big Mac and whatever you get at McDonald's, and he was stuffing himself with his. He said, "Oh, Duncan, see, you are. Well, I bought you your stuff." And I said, "Yeah, look, there's this." I told him what had happened. I said, "Fantastic opportunity. You wouldn't give me that $1,000." I said, "Look, come with me. Come with me. You come with me, and you can see it. If you've got the money, pay it. This is a fantastic opportunity." And he said, "Well, no, I've bought a Big Mac. I've been waiting 2 hours for the Big Mac." I thought, oh, blimey. I said, "It's a fantastic opportunity." And it was evening. I said, "Look, they're shutting soon. We've got to go back. It's a great opportunity." He said, "No, I have my Big Mac." But he said, "I'll tell you what, look, here's the money." Gave me this money.
$1,000?
Yeah. Very kind of him. Very, very kind of him. So I went back, I gave this $1,000, and I thought, well, these guys... Don't forget, this was Soviet Union about 1990, and $1,000 was, in real terms, in what you could buy, was something probably on the black market exchange rate was, I don't know, probably like $1 million. There was not, certainly a lot of money, hundreds of thousands in real terms. Well, I gave him the money, went back, and he bought me another Big Mac. And as I say, we were wired differently, but he was born for that moment. And there's a lesson there. If you think people are different to you and they irritate you, well, yes, but they're good in other ways. So the adverts are published, and I spent the next few years running around visiting the thousands of people, or some of the thousands of people who replied to that, baptizing them. If you wonder why the gospel spread throughout Russia and the former Soviet Union in those years, well, that was one of the reasons. Now, fast forward a few years. Fell out with that brother over the fellowship issue, I'm afraid to say, but baptized people, and I was gathering them together, and the gatherings were now possible. The Soviet Union had technically finished in '91, and I was gathering people together at Bible schools, and we'd get 150 up to 200 people coming for a week or so. I'd rent like a sanatorium or some sort of cheap hotel, cheap sort of conference centre. Everyone would come, and I would get brethren to come out from the UK, give talks, baptise people, and in those days the economic crisis, we had to pay for the rental of the facility, plus we paid everybody's fares, because they couldn't have come otherwise. The economic crisis was that bad. A total devaluation of the Soviet ruble, and everything went crazy. So people used to come, and I'd pay their rail fares, which in Western terms are not that great, but when you've got 100, 150 people, it does sort of tot up. Well, I had it all set up, but the days of my departure from that particular group of brethren I was involved in was sort of coming to an end, and I was not the blue-eyed boy. Well, don't forget, in those days nobody took credit card in the Soviet Union or Russia. There was no way to use plastic at all. And so the idea was that I took cash, and everything was cash. I paid in cash for the sanatorium, paid everyone in cash for their tickets and so on. Then I get this message that the brother who was coming out from the UK, who was going to bring the money, he said, "I'm not coming anymore because you're a heretic and we're going to disfellowship you, so no, I'm not coming, and I'm not bringing the money with me." Well, thanks for telling me. I had gone from Vilnius up to Moscow a day in advance to start the Bible school, get it all set up. I was going to meet this brother at the airport in Sheremetyevo and expecting him to bring the cash. I'm not coming. I phoned him. I'm not coming. What about the cash? Well, that's your problem. But people were travelling 3-4 days across Russia and from Ukraine and that and on trains, and some of them didn't have the money to come back. I had to have that money in cash. I calculated that I needed to clear everything. I needed, I think it was something like $2,500 American dollars. This is before euros and all that. And I thought what to do. And I stayed in a little hotel that, I don't know if it's still there, the Tverskaya Hotel just off Red Square. And I couldn't sleep that night because I thought, well, I've got to start the Bible school in the morning. I've got to go out to the sanatorium, it's just out of Moscow a bit, and I've got to pay the bill on the sanatorium. I've got to start to reimburse the people for their fares when they come. I need $2,500 and in cash, and I don't have it. And the guy was going to bring it. He's not coming, and that's the end of that. I'm not in fellowship, and blah blah. Well, I don't know what to do, and I was up all night, couldn't really sleep, and I thought different people I could possibly call and see if they could send the money by Western Union or something like that, so that at least later in the week I'd come back into Moscow, pick the money up, sort it out. Couldn't think of anybody because of the whole fellowship issue. I thought of my dad. Well, it's like a son, it's like a shameful thing to go to your dad and ask him for money. I've always thought that was a shameful thing for me to do. Although it was not for me, it was for the Lord's work. And in those days, like, didn't have cell phones, and opposite that hotel, across the big road there, normally in the daytime full of traffic, there is what was called the Central Telegraph, which had phones in it. And what you did, you went to the receptionist and you booked so many minutes to such and such number, you paid your money, and then they called you. And they put an announcement out and said, go to cabin number 5 or whatever, and then they had called the number and they said, hello, wait a minute, there's Mr. Easter on the phone for you. Then you picked it up and you spoke for however many minutes you bought in advance. And I had all this worked out, and the only way out of this is talk to my dad, see if he could send that money over somehow. So I went over there, and I was prepared to go over there. I had it all worked out in my mind. And the lesson is that sometimes you think there's only one way out of a problem. There's only one way. And this, for me, was as if I'd done it, although I have to do this. Well, Moscow is 3 hours ahead of the UK. My dad was in London, UK. And this Central Telegraph was open 24 hours. And I thought, I've got to do this, and I can imagine me crossing the road, doing it. But I didn't want to do it because it was shameful for me to call my dad and ask him to give me money. And I thought, well, he's going to get it. Maybe he can, at least in a few days, maybe he can get it over to me, blah, blah. And I wasn't in my dad's good books either, over this whole fellowship business either at the time. Well, I checked out of the hotel. It was about 3 o'clock in the morning. And I thought, well, I am going to cross the road and go to the Central Telegraph that's opposite that hotel. There's a big road, about 3 or 4 lanes each way. But I couldn't do it. I was standing there on the street, outside the hotel. Next to the hotel was a casino.
Phoenix?
I don't know what it was called. There was a hotel. Sorry, there was a casino next to the hotel. Well, I was standing there outside the hotel. Never gambled, never been involved in that. It's one of the sins I managed to avoid in my life. I'm not sure I've ever actually been inside a live casino, but anyway.
There you have to be with me to 10-pin.
Well, a 10-pin isn't really a casino, but anyway. There I was standing there, and suddenly the door of the casino opened. This bloke came out, high as a kite. I don't know if he'd been doing drugs or doing alcohol, and he was yelling, I've won, I've made it, I've made it, I've won. I've made it. And he came running out and he hailed a taxi. There's a few taxis going around. His taxi stopped. The bloke got in the taxi, drove off. Now in Moscow in the summer, this is in the summer, there's very little darkness. There's some light most of the night, and it was fairly light even by 3 o'clock. And a white envelope fell out of his pocket. Well, I went over and picked it up, and it had 3 with a circle round it, written in pencil in the top right-hand corner. And I quickly tore it open. I thought, that's $3,000. Well, the bloke had driven off in his taxi, and I thought, well, I need 2.5. Well, I thought, what do I do? I mean, if it was the kids, I'd say, no, you must give back money that you find on the street, or you must hand it in to the police. I mean, in Russia in whatever it was, early 90s, I mean, they'd probably arrest you because they thought you'd been funny or dodgy or something. Although I'm not going to go back in the casino and say, hey guys, here's some money that fell out of that guy's pocket. And I thought, well, the guy as high as a kite and he's gone off in a taxi. So instead of crossing that road to the Central Telegraph to call my dad, I hailed a taxi stopped. I said, take me to wherever it was, one of the Paveletsky or whatever, it was one of the railway stations that I was going to get the electric train from there out to the Bible school venue. So I got in the taxi and I told a guy where to go, and I put my rucksack on my knees. I was sitting in the back seat, and I mean, I should have been thankful to God, right? I should have been really thankful. God, thank you. But I had this funny irritation about God. Instead of being thankful as I should have been, I thought, look, I need 2,500. And you've given me 3,000. Like, what do? Give me $500 for my trouble. Is that what you did, God? You give me $500 for all my trouble that you put me to. Well, I should have been grateful, right? I should have thought, thank you for getting me out of the problem, and thank you that you gave me 500 extra. Well, I started to, I put my rucksack on my knees, didn't want the taxi driver looking in his mirror, seeing me counting out $3,000, because I might not have got to my destination. So I opened this envelope fully. I started counting. What they'd done, they weren't all hundreds. There were some 50s in there, quite a lot of 50s. And I counted it up, and although it had 3 with a pencil written in pencil with a circle around it in the top right-hand corner, there was 2,500 in there. So, and then I thanked God. I said, well, thank you. You saw exactly my number that I needed, and I'm sorry for being cranky. That you gave me 500 for my trouble as well. And maybe he would have given me 500 for my trouble, but because I didn't have the right attitude, so I didn't get it. Well, I don't know what to make of that, but it's a bit funny that in Red Square, Moscow, on 2 occasions, there was an issue with big sums of money, these were big sums in those days, that involved American dollars. In the very same place. Now, as I say, after a few years, I mean, the $1,000 in 1990 was worth, or whatever it was worth a lot more than $1,000 was then worth in the Soviet Union by 93, 94, whenever it was, when this Bible school was going on. All the same, there's a lot of money. What do you learn? Well, one thing is, don't think there's only one answer. I thought the only answer was to cross that road, phone my dad at midnight UK time and say, Dad, here's the problem, could you bail me out with some money? But there's another option that I could never think of, and the Bible says that God will do exceeding abundantly above all we ask or think. And that's what God did to me. Well, we cannot attach meaning to event specifically, but it was too weird that the same sort of theme of American dollars and big sums occurred they're in the same geographical location. And so I do sort of wonder whether there's angels operating in a certain area. I don't know. But I just thank God for it. And there's a lot of talk in a lot of evangelical circles, Pentecostal circles, about God will bless you with money. Well, I don't think so. I don't think that's what he does. But he will provide for his work to be done. That's the point. And he will provide right up to the dollar. And he might even give you a bit more if you're grateful for it. And I wasn't grateful at the time, so I didn't get that at the time. So be grateful. And God knows your need. And God will provide, even if he takes you pretty well up to the end. And I just thank God for it all.